In 2003, BBC Radio Wiltshire, as it was then called, joined the National Restoration Campaign by spending a day with the Wilts and Berks team, travelling from the Oxfordshire border to the junction of the canal with the Kennet and Avon at Semmington. This is the second of a series of abridged recordings of the day, where BBC presenters Mark Seaman, Anna Quarrendon, Dan Chisholm and John Marshall uncovered the restoration story of the Wilts and Berks Canal.
I hope you enjoyed that one piece at a time. And I guess in a way that's what they're doing at the moment, just rebuilding the Wilts and Berks Canal one piece at a time, because that's part of our very special morning show today, the restoration of the canal. With me now is Vic Miller, who's a director of the Wilts and Berks Canal Trust. Vic, we were talking earlier on about the importance of volunteering. Tell me a little bit about your role, though, with the trust, first of all.
Right. Well, I'm involved with the council of management as organising the overall running of the canal. The council of management consists all of volunteers who have come in through various interests. In my case, my interests developed when I took early retirement, and which was about 12 years ago, and I decided that I needed a totally new interest, and I took up canal restoration. I'd already had a long-term interest in boating through many years of...
You've got your own boat, of course.
Oh, of course, yes. So that's my one of my pride and joys at the moment. It's a narrowboat called Nonsuch, which I keep on the Kennet and Avon Canal, and unfortunately at the moment it's broken down. But that's just a little problem. I'm trying to sort it out. But
it's in Nonsuch working order at the moment. Actually, you and I are sitting in the middle of a field in your own camper van as well. You say you're torn between the narrowboat and the camper van, but clearly one gets you to the other.
Well, in fact, I was asked by the BBC to have my boat down here for this event, but unfortunately it just wasn't possible due to the breakdown.
But it's nice to have the camper van, because you've still got the kettle on and we're having a nice cup of tea. Tell us about, really though, volunteering, because OK, the council are accepting that they'll need to invest, they'll need to put some real work in, there are various trusts involved, but without the volunteer, this canal ain't going to get done, really, is it?
No. Since 1977, I think, was the year when the Wilts and Berks Canal Amenity Group was formed, as it was before that it became the trust. The Amenity Group was entirely volunteers. It's been volunteers ever since, and the trust is entirely volunteers. We all the work that has been done on the canal during the period between 1977 and now has been done by volunteers. We've got 8 or 9 miles of canal restored, several structures. Without the volunteers, this wouldn't have been done. We need all sorts of people who have got any sort of interest that will provide us with a service. It can be physical work on the canal, or it can be on the management team. We need civil engineers, we need bricklayers, we need people who just do the pure labouring on the sites. We need organisers, organisers for the events and to provide secretarial services. We need
We need volunteers in all areas, basically.
Exactly.
I mean, we're hoping to talk to David Walker, who's been a guest on our programmes before, experienced Corps volunteer animator. But I mean, who makes a good volunteer? You're saying of all the skills you need there, but really, I mean, who would you like to see? I mean, I presume it's men and women, any age.
Any age. Like to take my case, when I took early retirement, I wanted something new to do, and that's how I got involved. There must be many people out there who are looking for a new interest to take up.
The thing that occurs to me also, Vic, is that not everybody can own a narrowboat. Not everybody can actually have the holidays necessarily. You know, it can be an expensive business. But through volunteering, you can be as involved as anybody who does have the boat or is able to be employed professionally, maybe with a trust and so forth.
That's right. You
get all the benefits and other cost.
The interest develops. The more you get involved, the more interest you develop. And you have to have enthusiasm to be able to follow it through, and dedication. All our volunteers have dedication to the cause, and it's a very important factor, and it comes through in the way that the results that we achieve.
Now you talk about enthusiasm there, Vic, and also it's not just enough to be enthusiastic though. How fit do you need to be? I mean, you're a fine figure of a man. You're wearing your shorts and t-shirt, look like you're ready for action.
Do we notice men in their shorts, Anna?
Well, you know, I can see those muscles rippling on your arms. Do we have to be fit to help along here restoring the canal?
Well, you say have to be fit. Well, I thought I was very fit up until 3 years ago, and I suddenly was struck down with a heart problem, which resulted in a triple bypass operation. But that's worked marvels on me, and since that time, I've been fitter than I've been for many years. And as long as you've got a good mind and you can develop things, you don't have to be physically fit, because a lot of the jobs that are necessary have to be done desk work and communicating with people.
So admin as well. But just finally then, what are the priorities at the moment? I mean, here we are sitting by the canal today. Clearly this is fairly sort of an area that still needs work doing. But if you were, you know, sitting down with somebody now saying, look, these are the priorities for the Wiltshire Barks at the moment, this is where we need volunteers right now, what would you say?
One of the areas that we're badly in need of is good civil engineers. We've got one civil engineer who works with us, but he is a working man and therefore is restricted on the amount he can do. We do need more civil engineers to come and work with us to plan our projects and to work out what has to be done. We also need a lot of more administrators, because we do find that the present team of administrators are very hard pressed, and we do need more people to do that.
So if you think there's opportunities for you maybe to get involved, the Wiltshire Barks Canal Trust would love to hear from you. We have all the information, of course, with our CSV Action Desk, and in fact there is going to be a pack put together for all that we've been discussing today. So if you want to know any more about the Wiltshire Barks Canal, maybe how you can volunteer, get involved, or just do your bit, then do get in touch with the CSV Action Desk. That number as ever is 08000 922 944. That's the Action Desk for your information pack about today's programme and all we're discussing with the Wiltshire Barks Canal and its restoration. That's 08000 922 944. Just gone 17 minutes past 11.
Well, thanks very much, Mark, over in Wootton Bassett. I'm pleased to say at long last, I, Dan Chisholm, have finally found water. Yeah, we've taken quite a journey out of Swindon town centre in the beautiful sunshine at the moment, and we found our way through Old Town, past the BBC buildings where you can come for the open day, and then we made a little journey along Goddard Avenue. You may have heard in that area they've had tremendous problems with people going around slashing car tyres. We may have heard that in the news today. Then along Wesleycott Road, and then we had to navigate the notorious Mill Lane, which is known by local residents as being a nightmare of a rat run. It is very narrow, very windy, and runs behind the site of the old Princess Margaret Hospital in Swindon, down to the area on the south side of Swindon, but north of the M4, which is known as the Front Garden. Now, for those who don't know much about this development, I can tell you it's very controversial. There is housing planned for this, even talk of a football stadium long term, but whether or not, and if indeed how much of it is going to happen, we'll have to wait and see. Only time will tell. But I've actually found the canal, and we'll find out more about that after Cat Stevens. Will be on sale on Monday. You'll hear all about that on your breakfast show with Sandy Martin and the crew, I'm sure. Hang on. Just close the gate behind me if I possibly can, and just sprint up this pathway because my interviewee's in the distance. And either side of me a bit of the old berries, which I can sink my teeth into if I feel hungry, and up this pathway, which then brings us to the site of the Wiltshire Barks Canal. Here I am in just opposite the little bend in Mill Lane, as a matter of fact, as I described a few moments ago, and Ken Oliver is still here with me, and we're at a location which is known as Bevan's Bridge in the Front Garden. Now I have to tell you, as I describe this bridge, it looks incredibly new. Now tell me more about it, Ken.
It's a rebuilt bridge, Dan, rebuilt by one of our volunteers, virtually single-handed, a chap named Ron Robertson. He's a keen bricklayer, and this was his project. It's built to full road specification. It replaces an old bridge that was here on the original canal, and rebuilt to celebrate the millennium 3 years ago.
This is phenomenal work. One man did this virtually on his own. I cannot begin. I mean, this is like a traditional, almost, it looks like it's almost a Cotswold stone type a bridge that's been built.
It is a showpiece for the canal, undoubtedly, and of course having the canal in water running away to Kings Hill to our left-hand side here is a showpiece for the Wiltshire Barks Canal Trust.
Excellent. Now let's just talk about the canal as we see it at this point here, because it looks in a bit of a sorry state to me.
Again, as one or two people were saying earlier at Wootton Bassett, the canal hasn't got any boats on it yet.
We run a little trip boat here during the summer, but it's just not enough to get all the surface weed off. If there were regular boats going up and down here, the water would look clear, all the weed that's on the top would disappear, and we'd have it back to full specification.
Because although we've got the M4 in the distance behind us and the canal sort of goes away, we're literally standing over the bridge as we face north with the water literally running from behind me to in front of me. It's amazing because you can sort of look in the distance, and despite that surface weed, we've got the rushes on either side of the canal there, but we can see that the wildlife is still coming in and enjoy it. There's a lot of coots, and I can see moor hens there as well. I didn't even know I knew about these things, you know, Ken.
There's some little grebe in here as well. Which,
that's the one that keeps disappearing under the water, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So the biodiversity is good for the area. It's a lovely green corridor, and now what was just a really sort of boggy mess a few years ago is back to a restored canal.
Now, the problem is, as I can see this, and you talked about this surface weed earlier, as we look into the distance, that's heading back towards the town centre as we face at the moment. What are the possibilities of that link into the town centre, and what are the major issues that you face?
Well, the canal is in water almost as far as King's Hill at the moment. The major issue to take it onto the town centre, well, first of all, we've got to put a new bridge to get the canal under King's Hill, and then the line's pretty much intact up to Milton Road, although the greensward has all sorts of gas pipes, water pipes, services buried underneath it, so it would be quite expensive to do, but that is a realistic aim to get part of the canal near to the town centre. And if the front garden development goes ahead, of course, well, who knows what might be possible there, perhaps a water bus service in Park and Ride.
Well, I mean, let's not ignore the fact that one of the things that they're also talking about is a new home for Swindon Town Football Club being based somewhere on this site away to our left now as we look.
Well, I know it's fairly controversial, but if the front garden development does go ahead, one of the positive benefits of it will be the restoration of the canal right as far as the motorway, and we hope, fingers crossed, that we might get a motorway crossing to get onto Wootton Bassett as well as part of that development.
Now, how would that happen?
The engineers tell me it's a relatively simple thing to do to get under a motorway.
They would.
Well, they describe how they're going to do it on the Cotswold canals, and I don't see why it should be any different here. They've got to cross the M5, we've got to cross the M4, and they literally build the tunnel over a number of weeks, have it alongside the motorway, and close off the motorway for a weekend, slide it into place, it's done.
Well, we're just walking across the bridge now and just coming down the other side, and I can see in the field, I can see the old magpies. Aren't you supposed to say hello to them or something? I don't know. I don't believe all that superstitious stuff. And there's the sheep in the distance as well. And on this side of the canal, where there have been quite a few people walking their dogs and wandering up and about, here's the publicity material for the Wiltshire Barks Canal, asking you if you can lend a helping hand, then it would be great to see you. And one of the points they make here is quite an obvious one. I didn't know Swindon had a canal. Well, of course, most people probably don't. The history of Bevans Bridge is here for you to read all about, and of course all the numbers if you happen to be walking this way to give you a little more on what it is all about. Restoration Day on the BBC. We're in Swindon and heading towards Wootton Bassett, and that's where we find Anna.
Yes, we're still on the towpath here, and we've been joined by all sorts of people. It's getting quite busy in this field now. Lots of guests who we'll be talking to throughout the programme. But with me at the moment is a very special guest, one of our listeners who's joined us here on the towpath. Hugh joins us from Brinkworth. Good morning to you, Hugh.
Good morning, Anna.
Now, you have a special fondness for the canal because you have recently been, well, not that recently, but until about 10 years ago, been working along it.
That's right. I was involved in laying the hedge. I was a member of a gang of three of us who did the hedge. I'm not actually an expert hedge layer, but I know how to do it. But a chap joined us after we'd started, and he proved to be a very expert hedge layer.
Hugh, how did you come to be involved in it? How did you find out about it?
Well, I just happened to be going around the Wootton Bassett carnival, their fete, at near Normarsh Road, and I just was on the lookout for something that involved with the environment, using the knowledge and skill that I'd attained in my working life. And when this chap told me that they got a mile of hedge to lay, I thought that was fair enough.
Well, you've obviously enjoyed the outdoor life and you're enjoying being outdoors with you here today. Thanks for coming along and spending some time with us on the programme. That's Hugh from Brinkworth.
Nice to have the listeners with us as well. Plenty more to talk about on this very special day, all part of the BBC's Restoration Summer. We're hopefully restoring the Wiltshire Berks Canal with Dan Chisholm, Anna Quarrendon and Mark Seaman. 29 minutes past 11, let's have a bit of music. Here's Paul Simon.
This service is for Trowbridge, Devizes and Salisbury.
It's all about Wiltshire. BBC Radio Wiltshire.
Here we are driving around at the moment, and as the mid-morning show continues with Mark and Anna in Wootton Bassett, we've, I should just tell you, we've made our way away from the front garden area. We're still sort of caught up on one of the roads around the back. I was trying to work out where we were. We came down Wharf Road as opposed to try and tackle Mill Lane again, heading back into Swindon. We decided to take the safer route, and we came out this way, and we're about to go past the big garden centre before long. We're past the turning for Elcombe, and we're going to be heading up towards Cricklade. Now, the reason for mentioning this is because as you look at Cricklade, there is this northern spur which we've talked about as you head towards the North Wilts Canal, as I think it may be known. We'll find out more on that a little bit later, and one of the things that we're hoping to do there is find out a bit more of what's going on in that neck of the woods, following on from the news which we heard about on the breakfast show this morning, which was good news for the Cotswold Water Park with its future plans. Now though, we're 3.5 miles away from Wootton Bassett, but we're not actually going in that direction, so we'll see you guys left over that side of the county a little later.
All right, thanks a lot, Dan. We're talking about volunteering here now. Are you still a volunteer with this radio station, or were you giving you a proper job yet?
You are so cheeky.
see a bit. It's just gone 26 minutes to 12 o'clock. Talking about volunteering, David Walker is an old friend to the radio station, experienced corps volunteer coordinator, animator, isn't it, David?
Animator, that's right.
I still love that title. It's great stuff. Just for those who haven't heard you on the radio station before, just remind us very briefly what your role is.
Okay, we're trying to find people, particularly over the age of 50, to help volunteering. We're trying to encourage people into volunteering that perhaps hadn't thought about it or given some vague thought but didn't really know what to do. So we're trying to help them, put them into contact with various charities and organisations that use volunteers, such as the Wilts and Berks Canal Trust. And what a fabulous day it is, Dan.
Oh, it's just glorious, isn't it? I mean, here we are at Templars Way, or Templars Firs, just off Wootton Bassett, down by the canal. Did you go canal boating yourself at all, David?
The last time I went canal boating was indeed with you about a month ago, I think, down at the Devizes locks there with the Bruce Trust. But no, I don't. But certainly from hearing your programme. In fact, I've got a bit of a complaint. I was listening to your programme coming up earlier this morning, and I thought, wow, that sounds really great. And I stopped off and got a punnet. And I've come down here to try and pick blackberries. But the countryside's denuded. It's been ravaged by Anna Quarrendon.
It has.
There's not a blackberry in sight.
I thought it was lipstick, but it's not. That's just purple from all the blackberries she's been having. Volunteering, you can see, can't you? I mean, if you have been listening to the programme, we talked about the role of the council, of obviously sniff some money to be made and want to get involved. And I know that's me being a little bit jaundiced, but clearly, it is a business as much as anything else. Equally, just talking to Vic earlier on, saying that maybe not everybody can afford to buy a narrowboat. They can't afford maybe a narrowboat holiday. Some people on limited incomes and so forth, but still love the countryside, love being involved. This is an ideal opportunity for a bit of best of both worlds, isn't it?
It is indeed, and I think one of your earlier guests also underlined the point that this trust couldn't work without volunteers.
Yeah.
And I think also when you're thinking about a trust like this, you can think, well, yeah, I'd like to do some volunteering, but God, I got a bad back or something. I can't go down digging ditches and hacking out weeds and things.
To do admin or whatever.
Exactly. Trusts like this, they need admin, they need PR people, they need fundraisers. Just think laterally. Any skill you've got, you've had through your life experience. There are hundreds and hundreds of organisations requiring just those sort of skills. I've got on my books over 10,000 opportunities for volunteering.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh. And I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but we think very often of volunteers being maybe with Hospital League of Friends and those sort of things and charitable causes. But here's an opportunity maybe to volunteer with something that is, on the one hand, big commercial business, but also has that wonderful leisure and pleasure feel about it as well. So it's a chance for you to it can almost be like a hobby, really.
Yes, indeed, it can be, and just really tying in precisely with what you want to do. I mean, we're talking about restoration today, but at the risk of sounding like a leftover hippie,
You are a bit, though.
thank you. Takes one to know one, I guess.
Man.
No, I think about the restoration of the inner being of the person. How much enjoyment and how much benefit do you get as a volunteer? We're all sort of smacked with this idea of consumerism and how much that runs our lives these days, and also these sort of reports say how miserable we all are. Well, get out and do some volunteering.
Yeah, smashing it. Listen, David, we'll talk to you this morning in a moment. Anna, you got a present for David?
I have. You see, I've been out garnering the hedgerows.
Not quite a punnet but
not quite. Just three.
The 3 blackberries she hadn't eaten, she's now passed on to David. You're listening to your BBC local radio station. We're doing our bit for the Wiltshire Berks Canal today. Anna Quarrenden, Dan Chisholm, Mark Seaman. It's 22 minutes to 12. These are the Drifters.
BBC Radio Wiltshire. Travel.
Yes, a special day, a special programme, and let's hope for a good clean sheet on the travel front. Here's Anna.
Well, we have in Devizes, Cairn and Bradford-on-Avon on 104.3 FM, BBC Radio Wiltshire.
Well, we've left Mark Seaman and Anna in Wootton Bassett. We'll hear from them, but we're sort of wandering around all over the place at the moment as we're heading in the direction of Cricklade. We've now arrived coming into the western end of Purton, having been past Burt Hall's Garden Centre as well en route. The weather forecast for today, well, it's lovely and sunny outside across the whole of the county. And
Very good morning to you. If you just joined us, where have you been? We've been here best part of a couple of hours out and about restoration. It's a restoration summer with the BBC, and we're talking about restoration on the Wiltshire Berks Canal, and I'm standing by the canal just outside of Wootton Bassett at Templars Firs, and I'm just watching a horse. It's a dragonfly, beautiful dragonfly, just dipping onto the water. It really is lovely. Dan, have you such a beautiful vista before you?
Well, if you like the sight of Rhodes and John Marshall, then yes, I suppose so, really. But
not a lot to choose between the two, really, is there?
No, sort of one road out of anywhere, really. But no, we're just coming through Purton, and we're heading towards Purton Stoke. We're coming up past what most people in the area will know as the local landmark as you go over the bridge with the Ghost Train pub on the left-hand side as we're heading north at the moment. And we're not far away from our destination in Cricklade, where we're looking forward to reporting back on the excellent work which has been going on up there. But beautiful day today, as you say, and it's certainly nice to be out of the office.
It is lovely to be out of the office, and it sounds as though we're going to have a really good day here. If you want to come down to the canal, if you know the area about Templars Firs and you're walking along the towpath, we'd love to see you. Now, there is an awful lot of wildlife. I just said I saw a lovely dragonfly. It's not the only sort of creatures we've been seeing. If I look to my left where I am, there's a bridge about 200 or 300 yards away, and waving to me in the distance is Anna Quarrenden. Having a look at the wildlife yourself, Anna? Hello, Anna.
Hello.
Oh, yes.
I can see an awful lot from where I am. I'm standing on a wooden footbridge which crosses the canal from left to right. You can probably hear the train going past as I'm talking to you.
11:45 for Paddington is going past now.
It's chugging away. And actually we've seen various people chugging along the towpaths this morning. There was a gentleman earlier who was jogging along the towpath. So it's not just walkers with their dogs, although there is a gentleman walking his small Jack Russell as we look at him at the moment. So it's a very peaceful.
We're really seeing some beautiful insects and creatures around. Talking about the dragonflies there. Seen one, it's the most wonderful blue and green, and there are some brown ones and so forth. Anna, are you still there?
I am still here.
But we lost you for a second.
All right, no, I'll stand still. I'm getting excited and jumping about. Where I am standing, it describes the place as wetland habitat, and there is obviously a lot of wildlife here to see. If I look back towards Wootton Bassett, towards itself, I can see swans coming down towards me, and in fact there's one just under the bridge as I'm talking to you, dipping and extending its neck into the water. Swans and moorhens to one side, and then if I turn to face the other direction, the swans now just come out under the bridge, gliding along very tranquilly in the sunshine. But on either side of the banks of the canal, you've got the blackberries you've mentioned, obviously glistening in the hedgerows, but we've also got, extending over the water, lovely sloe tree, sloe gin. I gather that's the blackthorn tree which bears that fruit. I may be wrong. If you're a gin lover, you'll know that it makes
My dad used to make his own many years ago.
a good glass or two. But things I've just spotted and I don't know very much about it, but things I've spotted on the water, there are some water lilies which are pink and very pretty. Frogs, little tiny weeny frogs, only about an inch long.
We nearly trod on one in a field earlier, didn't we?
We did, and they're hopping about along the towpath amongst the bulrushes. There's also, on the leaves of the various plants we've seen at ankle level, a very pretty blue, sort of indigo-coloured flower, which I think might be called vetch. It has a sort of little tiny serrated leaf, which is very delicate. That's at ankle level. You've got rosebay willow herb, which is about waist height and has a pink flower which when it goes to seed is white and fluffy. A butterfly has actually just landed on my nose as I'm talking to you, a little white butterfly. And the subject of flies, a damselfly, which I thought was a dragonfly, but Tony just recently told us that it was actually a damselfly, which are blue when they're male, so we've seen a male one, and green when they are female. And there's another variety which is brown when it's female and red when it's male. So we've seen a couple of those as well.
Oh, well, maybe that's what I'm looking at now, because I thought they were sort of a shade of brown, but I suppose they are more reddish. But the damselfly we saw earlier had this sort of fluorescent blue hoop around its tail. I'm looking at a sort of bluey green one all the way. Is that a female then, is it?
I think that's a female if it's green. But that show off is the man. But being here actually does remind me of being on sort of nature study walks that we used to have at school and don't so much have these days.
The rambles.
In the hedgerows there are lots of hips and haws and berries to collect. And I did a little while ago see a lady called Lisa who was walking along the towpath. She had a tiny little child on her shoulders. Her name was Scarlet, and her lips were not scarlet but purple because she'd been nicking blackberries too. Mm-hmm. And they live in Templars Firs and regularly walk this way because there's just so much to see, and the little ones like picking the berries and looking at the trains. So there's plenty here too. The other thing I've seen, always keen on things to eat, crab apples growing along the way, and also wild mint, and that has a lovely little purple-headed flower. Looks a little bit like a chive flower, but it is in fact wild mint, and the leaves are very small, about probably half an inch long, but when you press them with your fingers you get the lovely aroma of mint. So not only lovely things to look at this morning, lovely things to taste, and lovely things to smell.
I tell you what I haven't seen, Anna, and I'm quite surprised actually, is I haven't seen any sort of buddleia growing along the hedgerows. And normally, when you go along rail tracks and so forth, it seems to grow in the most obscure and difficult places, and yet here you would think it could grow as much as it liked, and I haven't seen any buddleia, have you?
No, I haven't seen any buddleia in the hedgerows, but maybe Hugh Sace, who we talked to earlier, would know a thing or two about that. He was telling us about laying the hedges back in the 1990s and managing them. One of the things that they did at that time, apart from keeping them to a certain level, because they were about 12 or 15 feet then, they wanted to keep them at a level so that they could clear the views across to the Marlborough Downs in one direction. And one of his jobs was to clear out some of the unwanted growth of things like elders and blackthorn, which were obscuring the growth of the otherwise generally hawthorn hedges. And actually now a lot of that growth isn't there, but I don't know what else would be living amongst it, but certainly the hips are part of it, and there's something which I think might be called yarrow, which is growing at the base of the hedgerow. So although they have grown up again now, and the view toward the Marlborough Downs is obscured by trees and hedgerows.
All right, if you want to know more about wildlife and gardening, you're along with the lovely Paulina on Sunday?
Yes, we'll be at Twigs allotment garden centre in the middle of Swindon in Cheney Manor, so join us there. It's a bit of an oasis in the middle of town.
Well, that's the garden party on Sunday. I'm just looking away from Anna along the river, along the canal here, and to my left, looking across a field of maize, and beyond, the fields beyond Wootton Bassett and so forth. It just is the most glorious autumnal day.
It is, Mark, but one thing we shouldn't do today, even though we may be tempted in the warmth, is to take a dip, because there is a notice on the far side of the canal which just says this water is very, very deep and absolutely no swimming in big red letters.
And a bit sludgy as well. You're listening to The Morning Show. Dan Chisholm, Anna Correndon, Mark Seaman. We're talking about restoration. It's our restoration day with the BBC locally for the Wilts and Berks Canal at 8 minutes to 12.
Dan Chisholm, along with Mark Seaman, Anna Quarrendon, we're out and about and we're talking about Restoration Day, as it is across the whole of the BBC today, but not just on this particular mid-morning show, is it, Mark?
No, indeed. Graham's going to be continuing the theme this afternoon. And I was just thinking, you know, Dan, talking about the sort of the views that we've had, and it really is lovely here, and looking at the wildlife and so forth. And how do you capture it? And one of the things that Graham's talking about this afternoon, he's chatting with a girl called Jane Clements, who runs the Kennet and Avon Canal Shop in Devizes, and she's got an artist. She's an artist with traditional canal art. I'm just thinking, you know, how lovely it is to see some of the paintings, the pictures, or just the art that must be formed around the canal, because you kind of want to preserve days and views like this.
As long as he's not going to end up on a narrowboat, that's fine. Because as long as both you and Di are unable to do it, that's
I'm really annoyed about that. I wanted to be on the narrowboat. I've slightly forgiven Vic, because he has made us a few cups of tea in his camper van, but it's not the same as sitting on a narrowboat. Mike, you've been stuck in a car with John Marshall.
Yeah, and one or two others. We've actually arrived at our next point of call. We're just sort of about a couple of miles south of Cricklade at the moment, and we're ready to go. Where later in the next hour of the programme we're going to hear about the amazing work they've done on the restoration of the old part of the canal and rebuilding an aqueduct.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I was here a few weeks ago to have a look at the work, and it's amazing to see how far it has come in such a short space of time.
Yeah, they're really super. And don't forget, of course, as we said earlier, Graham will be here this afternoon. Another lady he's talking to is Rachel Banyard, who owns 3 miles of the canal and also some canal side property at Dauncey Lock as well. So finding out why she actually bought some of the canal. Mind you, I can't blame her really. I wouldn't mind my own stretch of waterway. Would you, Dan?
I was just thinking how lovely that would be. Yes, probably though. I'm afraid with the amount of money in my bank account, it'd probably get a small section of the towpath.
Yes, just enough for you to stand there with your Wellington boots and say, "This is my bit of river." That's it. All right, mate. You're listening to a very special morning show. It's the BBC. It's Restoration Summer with the BBC, and although it's the autumn, it feels that real summer feel about it as well today.
In Malmesbury, Bratton, Urchfont and Corsham, 104.3 FM, BBC Radio Wiltshire.
You're listening to the mid-morning programme on your local BBC radio station as we do our bit for Restoration Summer with the BBC. We're out and about helping to restore the Wiltshire Barks Canal, or at least talking to those people who are doing it. Let's catch up now. 12 midday it is. Let's have the latest news.